Brahma Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Yapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So where are we in our text?
We're on verse 40, chapter 3.
Which chapter?
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3. We're still in chapter 3, verse 40. Can you help us out, please, Puniji?
Yeah. Chaya veshata shakti chetaneva vibhati sa tatshaktyu-padhi sanyoga brahmai veshwaratam vrajet. This power appears as conscious because it is associated with the reflection of Brahman. And because of its association with this power, Brahman gets its omniscience.
I can't remember what we're talking about. Would you read the English of the verse before that so I get a context?
Yeah. If the particular attributes of all objects are not yet determined by this power, there would be chaos in the world, for there would be nothing to distinguish the properties of one object from those of another.
Okay, and then read this one again.
This power appears as conscious because it is associated with the reflection of Brahman. And because of its association with this power, Brahman gets its omniscience.
Okay, so what he's talking about, and in fact the term he's used is Ch.4. He calls it the reflecting power of Brahman. So let's see if I can do this with the Zoom people. So Zoomies, can you see the light in the mirror on the Zoom?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a light in the mirror?
No.
Well, isn't it shining in your face?
Yeah.
Interesting. So it is the nature of the mirror to reflect light. So also, it is the nature of the equipment, and most specifically, the subtle intellect, to reflect the qualities of consciousness. Another image that Shankara will use, you put an iron ball in a fire. The fire's dharma is hot, formless, and bright. The iron is cold, solid, and formed into a ball. But you take your tongs, you put the ball into the fire, and the ball borrows the dharma of the fire. And the ball becomes red hot and starts to melt. So also, the nature of Brahman is Satchidananda. So the universe and its things in it borrow, as it were, Sat from Brahman, from consciousness. They have no inherent existence apart from consciousness. And it seems to me that my mind is conscious, that I have states of consciousness. But in fact, the mind is just the flow of thought, the flow of vrittis. It is illumined by me. I am consciousness. But it seems like my mind is conscious, just like there seems to be a light in there. And the thing that is most deceiving is the world borrows ananda. This person I love, they make me happy. Ananda's over there. But that person, they're a jerk. They make me miserable. No, Ananda. It's all illusion. So it's by the Maya Shakti of the infinite that the world of name and form seems to take on the qualities of Brahman. Now, he's still in a polemical argument with the Shunyavadins, the Buddhists, who will say consciousness is a quality of the mind, and it too is temporary, and it is mutable, and it goes away and it comes back. And this may be an interesting thing to posit theoretically, but no one can prove by direct experience the temporary nature of consciousness itself. Because the question arises, okay, let's hypothesize consciousness is temporary, it can disappear, then who would know its absence? So what Vidyaranda thundered either last week or the week before, the nothing, the shunyata of the Buddhists, we call the self. Something does disappear as the result of nirvikalpa samadhi, of satori. What is it that disappears? This limited ego sense. Just like the dreamer disappears when you wake up. Something remains. It is no thing. It has no qualities, no characteristics, no shape, no form. But it's not nothing. It's Purnam, it's full of Baba being. Me? Next verse.
कोशोपाधि विवक्षायां याति ब्रह्मैव जीविताम् पिता पिताम् हश्चैक पुत्र पौत्रो यथा प्रति Brahman is called the individual soul, Jiva, when it is viewed in association with the five sheets, as a man is called a father and a grandfather in relation to his son or his grandson.
So, the same person can be the husband of his spouse, the son of his father, the father of his children, the employee of his boss, the manager of his subordinates. It's the same dude. So also, consciousness peeping through the five sheets we call the jiva. It only seems to be an individuality when I don't examine it. Going back to the term he used in the prior verse, Ch.4. Chaya not only means reflection in Sanskrit, it means shadow as well. So this jivahood only appears when consciousness is peeping out through the equipment. If, on the other hand, I introvert the attentive faculty and I go looking for this person, this jiva, it falls, evaporates. All I find is Chidakasha, the space of pure. Now, listen carefully. The thing to know about the karta, the agent, which is a function in the subtle intellect, it's very carefully. It's not bad. It's not evil. It's just not you. One couldn't function in the world without it. And for some people, it's broken. I was talking with a friend, and he has another person he's working with who is schizophrenic. Many of us have, interior dialogue. We have voices inside our head. For this fellow, because there's something wrong with his brain, it appears to him outside. These voices talk to him. And unfortunately, some of the time they persecute him. And he's convinced that there are demons or devils or beings who are persecuting him. This karta function in the brain is broken. But for you and me who have normal mental function, all we need to know is I am not that. I, the individual, Jim, I'm going to go have dinner after class tonight. I didn't eat before class tonight. What am I going to have? Am I going to make a salad or have leftover soup? That's a sense of agency. There's nothing wrong with that. Yogi wants to know I am not that. It's just a function. This used to really bug me because Like we'd be at dinner with Swamiji, and he would say, "Pass me the chutney." He had a sense of agency. I get all upset about it. And you don't have to talk funny. You just have to know. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Putradeira vivakshayam na pita na pitamaha tat vannesho na pijiva Ch.3 vivakshane. As a man is neither a father nor a grandfather when considered apart from his son and his grandson, so Brahman is neither Ishvara nor Jiva when considered apart from Maya or the five sheets.
Yes. So, what is the difference between you and God? We have that great Mahavakya, Tattvamasi, you are that. And at the level of the ego, we say that's nonsense. I'm pretty powerless. God's infinite. What do you mean I'm God? Or I get deluded and I'm going to do lots of Kundalini yoga, then I will become godlike. You're going to get hit with a thunderbolt. Doesn't mean that. We negate the upadhis, the conditionings of both. For the individual, negate the physical body. For the macrocosm, negate the jagat. For the individual, negate the subtle body. For the macrocosm, negate the total mind. For the individual, negate the causal body, my bundle of vasanas. The macrocosm, negate the total vasana, which we call the Ishvara. What is at the core? What is the substratum of the individual? Consciousness. What is the ground of being of the whole universe? Consciousness. I am Atma, Brahma. This self is Brahma. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Ya evam brahmatvedesha brahmaiva bhavati swayam brahmano nasti janmata punaresha na jayate. He who knows Brahman thus becomes himself Brahman. Brahman has no birth, so he also is not born again.
Yes. So, when you realize yourself, what you realize is you were never born in the first place. It is like the person who's dreaming they're locked in a jail. And when they're in the dream, it seems like what they need to do is get out of jail. But when you wake up, you realize, oh, I don't need to get out of jail because I was never really in jail in the first place. It was all just a dream. So you don't become free from rebirth. realize you were never born in the first place. What about reincarnation? What, am I going to come back? Do I have to come back and do this again? And Swamiji would say reincarnation is the genealogy of the ghost in the pose. What concern have I with the various names? So there's a practice that becomes very important as we penetrate deeply into this. There is a state that some of us can get to where we have renounced the world to a tremendous degree. We don't have too many desires left, but we may have a whole lot of unconscious aversions. And then what do I want to, then what does my mind say? Oh, I can't wait to get realized. Then I don't have to come back to this stupid life again. It's all dukkha, it's all suffering. Oh, when is this life going to be over? No, I just hope to God it's my last one. Not an uncommon state. And that's not freedom. So I call it the vampire Lestat meditation. You ever read an interview with a vampire? Vampire Lestat, he couldn't be killed. He kept coming back to life, kept coming back to life. What if you were going to be in the body for the rest of eternity? How would you live? You just don't give a damn. That's how you do. So we live with death on one shoulder and immortality on the other shoulder. No fear of the death of the body, but also no aversion to being in the body. This is it. Right here, right now. Give up all ambition. No, you go nowhere. You are changeless. You simply watch the Leela, the play over. Just as a person has no concern for their shadow, so the person of steady wisdom has no concern for the body. Big red button, automatic pilot. Don't do this thing. Getting its allotted dose of successes and failures. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
That's the end of this chapter.
All right. Chapter 4.
Chaturthodhyayah Dvaite Vivekah. Chapter 4, the differentiation of duality.
Yeah.
Ishvare napi jivena srishtam dvaitam vivichyate viveka sati jivena heya bandha sputi bhavet. In this section, we shall discuss the world of duality created by Ishvara and Jiva. By such critical discussion, the limit of duality causing the bondage which the Jiva has to renounce will be clear.
So, in Vivekachudamani, we have the 7 questions. What is bondage? How does it come about? How does it continue to exist? How do I get out of it completely? What is the not self? Who is the real self? And what is the process of discrimination between the two? Self and the not self. That's essentially what chapter 3 was about. But Yoga Vasishta gives us 3 questions. Who am I? What is this world? And how has it come about? So this is the paradigm that this 4th chapter is going to take us. Practically speaking, what does it mean? It's comparatively easy for us to come to the place where I know I'm the witness. I'm that consciousness that's always the witness of this world. But the next step is to see the self in and through all the people, places, things, and conditions. If I'm still in ignorance about what is this world and how has it come about, then I may be a person who becomes dependent upon isolation and meditation. Leave me alone, this terrible world. I just want to meditate and bliss out. That's not freedom. It's not freedom. How can it be freedom? As Ch.4 Rahasyan says, when it's gain or loss is accomplished by the opening or closing of the eyes, the length of 8 grains of barley. So, Advaita, non-dual, meaning I see stuff. There's stuff out there, objects, emotions, and thought. They seem like 2, subject and object. This chapter is working on, though it seems like 2, it's not 2. Advaita. Going on.
Mayam tu prakritim vidyat, mahinam tu maheshwaram, samayi srijatit yahu, shvetashtara shakinaha. The Shvetashwaratara Upanishad says, quote, know Maya as Prakriti and Brahman associated with Maya as the great Ishvara, end quote, who imparts existence and consciousness to it and guides it. It is he who creates the world.
Yes. So here Vidyaranya is footnoting his ideas. Now let's look at, this is late medieval period. Vidyaranya is 14th century. So we've got the Vedic period, which is really old. We've got the classical period. We pretty much think of Shankara's classical period. This is much later. This is the medieval period. By this time, terms are very definite and the technical definitions are much clearer. So we have avidya and we have maya. Avidya here is personal ignorance. Its essential nature is first and foremost the non-apprehension of the truth of Varana Shakti. Then there's a subsequent misapprehension, Vikshepa Shakti, or Adhyasa, superimposition. That can be crossed over. Maya is the inherent power of consciousness itself, of Brahman. The locus of Maya is Brahman. Some people think, oh, Maya's in my mind. No, your mind is there because of Maya. So, Brahman has inherent within it an absolute freedom of will. Its first manifestation is Ishvara, or Brahma, the creator, which is the potentiality of all manifestation. From that proceeds not only your body, mind, intellect, and mind, but the earth itself, space itself, time itself, galaxies, supernovas, black holes, dark matter, and everything we don't even know about. All of that is the result of Maya Shakti, the inherent power of the infinite. Now, one etymology of the word Maya has as its root ma, which means not. That which is comprised of not. I don't mean K-N-O-T, I mean N-O-T. How is it that consciousness, which is one without a second, which is changeless, which never moves, it is achalam, seemingly like imagination, has the entire universe arise in it. Now, the Tantrikas will say consciousness vibrates, spanda, and that's what causes this. The Vedantins say no. So back to our mirror. When the mirror is there and you look into it and you see objects reflected in the mirror, has the mirror undergone any change? No. If Puneet looks into the mirror and there's Puneet's face in the mirror, can I reach in and pull the Puneet out? No. It is the nature of the mirror to reflect. It is the mirror itself, Bimba, which is appearing as reflection, pratibimba. The other classic image is spatika, crystal, when I bring out the crystal ball. If I compare the crystal ball to the little granite prayer stone, both of them are stone. But the prayer stone, granite, has no inherent power to reflect. It's just an inert stone. But the crystal, the quartz crystal, is also stone. But you look into the crystal and you see images in it. Yet if I cut open the crystal, I can't pull images out. It is the nature of the quartz crystal to reflect and have images appear. Now, with the spatika, the crystal, and the bimba, the mirror, both of these examples fall short because they need external objects to create the reflections. Consciousness needs no external object. It's just its nature. Is Maya a real power? Can I see, oh God, there's a force of Maya moving through it. I can grab some Maya. No. We can't say it exists, but we can't say it doesn't exist. All we can say is it's powerful. So what the whole chapter is based on is for us to see that the world of name and form is not separate from consciousness. And its inherent swabhava, inherent nature, is still Satchidananda. The names and forms are inherently shunyata. Not good, but they're not bad, they're just empty. But when I'm deluded, when I'm under the spell of Maya, I think I'm over here, the objects are over there, and they're concrete and solemn. The people are sentient, separate from me, joy-giving and misery-producing. That is an illusion. Granti. Vaidhatya. False. So this is the whole point of this chapter. And he's going to deal with it microcosmically at the individual level, avidya, and macrocosmic level, Maya. Both words essentially mean illusion, delusion, ignorance. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Atma va idam gre bhutsa ikshata srija iti sankalpena srinjallo kansa etaniti pavrita. The Aitareya Upanishad says that before creation there was Atman only, and he thought, quote, let me create the world. And then he created the world by his will to create.
Sankalpena. the word that he says. Instrumental case. By means of sankalpa. Wish, will, thought, intention, imagination, desire. This story, this mythology, is not meant for us to attribute anthropomorphic qualities to the infinite. Doesn't mean that. Through poetry, it's mystic symbolism. There are 3 questions from Yoga Vasishta. Who am I? What is this world? Third one, how has it come about? Sankalpa. The world is not created the way a potter creates a pot. Philosophically, we talk about creation with 3 elements. There's a material cause, an instrumental cause, and an efficient cause. When a potter creates a pot, the material cause, the stuff out of which the pot's made, is clay. Where does it happen? On the potter's wheel. That's the instrumental cause. Who did it? The potter. That's the efficient cause. But when it comes to the universe, what is the material cause of all matter? What's the stuff out of which everything is made? Consciousness. Where does it all take place? Consciousness. Who did it? Consciousness. And again, this becomes easy to see how it happens. If we go to the dream state, you are the God of your dream state. When you dream that you're riding an elephant, what is your elephant made out of? The stuff of your own mind. What instrument did you use to make your elephant? The stuff of your own mind. Who did it? My own mind. And I created the space for the elephant to walk about, and the time for the elephant to go from this point to that point, and the feelings and the thoughts and the perceptions. It is mini Maya, the dream state. All of this comes about in the same way. Material cause, instrumental cause, efficient cause, Brahman and Brahman alone. Just as you, lying in your bed, are never touched by either your positive dreams or your nightmares, so also Brahman, the ground of being of everything, is never touched or altered. by the Leela, the play that goes on. Sarvamaya, Sarvabhananda. All is Maya. All is Maya. Next verse.
Ravan Vagnijalo Vyodhyandeha Kramadami Sanbhuta Brahmanastasmat Etasmat Atmanokhilaha. The Taittiriya Upanishad says that from the self or Brahman alone arose in succession the whole creation, including Akasha, Akasha, ether, air, fire, water, earth, vegetation, food, and bodies.
So in Taittiriya, we have the sequence of creation, which again is poetry. The point is, from consciousness, all this proceeds. Now, why is Vidyaranya doing this? Understand that for a devout Hindu, the ultimate authority is Shruti. So if you want to posit, wait a minute, I'm a jiva and I go through this terrible world of woe, and there's all that stuff out there, and the astrology says this, and karma says that, and cause and effect out there, and woe is me, and stuff like that. And not only that, Trump. Uranya is saying, Scripture says, no matter what it looks like, it's all consciousness. And how do the name and form come about? Sankalpena, by means of sankalpa. Now, listen very carefully. This is advanced teaching. You and I, at the level of the individuality, of Vyavahara in the world, reenact the creative process of the infinite. So those of us who may come from a Judeo-Christian background, the book of Genesis says God created humanity in his own image. In the image of God created he them. People in ignorance think, oh, that means God has 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head, and probably a beard. No. What is the image of God? What is the nature of God? What is God's swabhava? Consciousness, by means of sankalpa, brings forth the world of name and form. So you and I participate in the creative process. How? By means of our own sankalpa. So God is not creating the world at us and to us, but as us and through us. What do I mean by that? My sankalpa, of course, it's limited, but it's part of the creative process of the whole infinite. I've got a little corner of the universe, and by my intentions, my thoughts, my deeply rooted belief, I bring forth a little bit of God's infinite creation. This is what we call Tantra. So I like to summarize it this way. This world may be a dream, but at the individual level, it doesn't have to be so much of a nightmare. We have a lot more freedom to make a difference. Then you get all these ramifications of this. So who's doing more to bring the kingdom of God on earth, to bring peace on earth? The person marching around the lake with placards full of anger, or the yogi in her cave in the Himalayas, bringing forth that Ch.3, deep spiritual energy. This is why prayer works. In philosophy, we have a term called a fetish. We don't mean this in the sexual thing. A fetish is an object or an idea that we have to which we imbue power. So if you believe that a particular mantra will heal, it's your belief that empowers it. Now, if millions of people have believed in that mantra for thousands of years, then you're kind of tuned into that collective consciousness. It helps. Or in the West, if you believe if you go to Lourdes in France, you'll be healed. You might be. But how did the Master Jesus always say? First of all, he never begs. You never see Jesus in the Bible say, "Oh God, please help Lazarus." He never does that. He commands along. Be sighted. Take up your bed and walk. Lazarus, come forth. Because he was in a full state of yoga. He talked about this. He says, your faith has made you whole. He knew where the power was. Whatsoever you ask, believing, so shall you receive. It's never about willpower. That's not sankalpa. Sankalpa is knowing. Deep, deep knowing. And the most powerful mind is the completely detached, peaceful, single-pointed mind. But some yogis choose to take up the work to bring peace on earth, to make a difference. Who knows? They may end up fucking it up after all. You never know. All of this is part of yoga, and all the new agey stuff that you hear ultimately traces its origin back to you. Any thoughts on this before we go on? So, what is our assignment? Not only deal with your relationship with your thoughts. That's what we do in the beginning. We've got to become conscious. Oh, that's what I'm believing. That's what I'm thinking. That's what's really going on. Make the unconscious conscious. But then understand that you can change the habituated pattern. So the yogi gives up the kind of sick pleasure of dwelling in self-pity, negative thinking about other people, of gossip, tearing people down, bemoaning the state of the world. Why? Because that's sankalpa. Sankalpa. You don't want to be afraid of your mind. But you might find value beginning to shift and change things. The person in ignorance thinks externals create mind states. The yogi understands it's the other way around. It's my largely unconscious but habituated mind states that create at least my perception of the world, and to a large degree, the names and forms themselves. David, you've done a lot of healing. David Silva, do you have anything you want to add to this idea?
Well, I've come to the conclusion, Jim, that people can train to do it, but it either happens or it doesn't. It's like talents.
Yes.
And for me now, what happens, I was taught a particular method, but now I don't think of it. It happens by itself.
And Jesus actually talked about that one too. One of my favorite stories. Jesus is walking along the road with his buddies, and a woman with an issue of blood, meaning she had a chronic hemorrhage, comes up behind him and touches his robe. And what the Bible says is, he turns and says, "Who has touched me?" For he felt power had gone out of him. At that point, it was non-volitional. It just happened, just like you were saying, David. And of course, that's the highest state of doing this. When we become an instrument for Ishvara, an instrument for God. All right, next verse.
Bahu syama hame vata raja ye yeti kamatah tapas taptva trijat sarvam jagatit jagatityah titirihi. The Taittiriya Upanishad says that desiring I shall be many, so I shall create. The Lord meditated and thus created the world.
And again, this is poetry. It is by means of the Maya Shakti that this world of name and form that appears as multiplicity comes into being. Next verse.
Idam agre sadevasi bahutvaya tadaikshata tejo bannanda jadini sasarjeti cha samagaha. The Chandogya Upanishad says that before creation, Brahman or the self alone existed, and that his nature was pure existence. He desired to become manifold and created all things, including fire, water, food, and beings born of eggs and so forth.
So first is consciousness. And again, it's poetry to attribute desire to the infinite. Does a rose bloom because of desire, or does it just bloom because it's its nature? I think that's more like what we are talking about. So it is the nature of the infinite Brahman by means of Maya Shakti for all this to appear. Like images in a mirror, like the reflections in crystal. Conscious itself does not undergo a change, yet all this stuff appears. Next verse.
So, could we say that Maya itself has a property of desiring?
I wouldn't frame it like that. I would frame it that because of the nature of Maya, the ultimate desire in the universe becomes manifest. It's one of the things that arises. Maya itself, it's not conscious either in a sense. It's just a power. But however you frame it, it's up to you. I wouldn't worry about it too much. I personally would not attribute desire to Maya. I would say,
I guess the Kashmiri Shaivism folks do that, right? Like they call something like Ichha Shakti, which is one of the powers.
Same thing, Ichha Shakti, yeah. The power of wishing or willing. And they attribute it to what? To consciousness itself?
I forget.
Yeah. But whether you see consciousness as spanda vibrating, having Ichha Shakti, that it desires, it makes things happen, or you see that it's sthita, that it never moves and things just appear, who cares? I mean, these are things that let's let the philosophers deal with it. The whole point is it's not separate. It's not out there. And from a practical standpoint, situations do not create mind states. Mind states create at least my perception of situations, and to a large degree, the situations themselves. I think I told you all, I had a student sitting right there on the couch during COVID, and he was an anti-vaxxer. And he was going on and on and on about the big pharma, they're all corrupt and the whole world's corrupt and they're out to get you. And you've got to guard yourself against all this corruption and stuff like that. And you've got to protect yourself and you got to be, aware of all this terrible stuff in the world. And I said, stop. I don't live in your world. In my world, I live and move and have my being in God. I live in a beneficent universe that conspires for my well-being. Now, deep spiritual realization transforms our vision, which changes our subconscious. This fellow and I live in the same world, that we walk the same streets, have mutual friends, same one. Did that make sense? That makes sense. And I think of people like St. Francis of Assisi, who so knew his connection with life that wild animals would come to him. Same with Ramana Maharshi. Is a bear a terrible, scary animal? Depends on who you are. Not for Francis. He was Brother Bear. Give me a hug. Let me give you another real live example. I went over to the city on Thursday. People are talking, oh, it's so terrible, violence, drugs and street people, stuff like that. Came back from the bar. I took the elevator up to the street level, which I don't normally do. And I got turned around. I didn't know which side of Broadway I was on, nor which way was headed towards Jack London or Grand Avenue. And there was a homeless person. I went up to him and I said, pardon me, do you know where the number 12 bus stop is? And he said, oh, you got to go 2 blocks down. Because there's the 72 and stuff like that. And so I'm tippy-tapping away. And this sweet, sweet person comes up behind me and says, here, let me show you where the bus stop is. I practically wanted to cry. God helps me. That's the world I live in. But we cultivate this. We cultivate it. Sankalpena. Is that useful? All right, this is a good place to stop. What verse are we on for next week?
Number 7.
Number 7. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha.